in life, in a creative endeavor, in a business endeavor, if you only focus on the result, then your joy only lasts for a fraction of a second. Oh, that's nice.
Fraction. Yeah.
Fraction. And I'm like, well, no, I'm obsessed with the creative process, and I still am after 30 years. So I really relish the joy. I get the goosebumps from the process.
Hello, and welcome to the Studio Takeover podcast. Today is a really special interview. Today we have Jerry Ghionis. Jerry Ghionis is a powerhouse. He and his wife, Melissa, champion the Icon Awards. He has been winning awards across the globe for 30 years. He's one of the kindest people I've ever met within this industry. And this conversation, we navigate his history and competitiveness and all things creative, because it's in the creative process that we picked up a camera to begin with. It's the joy of the making of the thing. It's the joy of connection with the person that we're photographing and how we connect with the world around us. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Let's get started.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Very excited to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. I was, kind of mapping out conversations, and I was like, this is a huge transition for the Icon Awards. And, with award season kind of building up and in motion, I was like, we've got to have this conversation about how it's valuable and why it's valuable. Everybody's just like, awards, clients don't care about awards, but they do. And I know with my work, I was in the same boat. Right? Well, clients don't care about awards. Like, I focus on what pays me, right? And then as I started diving into WPPI and the Portrait Masters is really when I started to notice a shift in my skills, not just like with light and, the technical proficiencies, but with connection and concept development. And you
Right.
are at the helm of that ship, my friend.
I mean, it's been a long journey. My competition journey, I think, started mid-90s, I think. I mean, at the beginning of my career, and I would look up at these heavyweights, these photographers that I admired, respected, and this platform sort of gives you the opportunity to rub shoulders with the world's best.
Mhm.
And I believe playing with better players makes you better. It's as simple as that. I mean, if you like sport in the spirit of the Olympics that are happening at the moment, if you like tennis, for example, and you play tennis with someone who doesn't even know how to hit a ball or play very badly, it's pretty boring. So a lot of people get intimidated by competition, and I'm like, I don't think of it as intimidation. I think of it as inspiration. What one person can do, another one can do. And then you see these,
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I've been just obsessed with the Olympics the last couple of weeks, and you see, these Olympians with these children with their heroes, and then they show the before and after photograph where now they're actually beating their heroes, whether it's on the track or in the swimming pool or whatever it may be. And it's really inspiring. And even to call yourself an Olympian, I mean, think about that for a moment. Like, you're an Olympian, that you are that for the rest of your life. So
Forever.
sometimes there's intimidation that comes with entering competition, and sometimes there's just, and I say this respectfully, a bit of ignorance. I don't know any better. Why would I even enter? I'm already successful. I'm making money. Well, that's like, think of it like an actor who is a box office draw card, but has never won an Oscar. You
Mhm.
telling me Tom Cruise would not want to win an Oscar? Probably the quintessential movie star on the planet, very few in his sort of peer group. You telling me that he wouldn't like to win an Oscar? Of course he would. Yes, he makes money, and yes, he makes billions of dollars with the movies and all that kind of stuff that he does. But being in that race, just simply putting your hand up and saying, you know what, I'm going to put myself out there. I am going to challenge myself to be in that conversation. And win, lose, or draw, I always tell people you must be obsessed with the process, not the result. And that's advice I give my nephew and my nephews and niece. They're the closest thing I have to real children in life. In a creative endeavor, in a business endeavor, if you only focus on the result, then your joy only lasts for a fraction of a second. Oh, that's nice.
Fraction. Yeah.
fraction. And I'm like, well, no, I'm obsessed with the creative process, and I still am after 30 years. So I really relish the joy. I get the goosebumps from the process. And if you win a trophy, pat in the back, well done, fantastic, it feels good. But my joy lasted the months of the creation of the creative process. And so this is the problem too. And I know that I'm probably covering a lot of topics because I'm so passionate about this, as you know. If you live for the validation, you'll also listen to the negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a validation driven person, I want to be respected by my peers and I want them to love me and I want them to love everything that I do, whatever. You'll also listen to the naysayers. Now, don't get me wrong, everyone wants to be loved, but I do it for the creative process. I do it for my clients, and the pat in the back from the peers is fantastic. But again, if you want your joy to be prolonged, do it for yourself. And at the end, five judges will tell you a score, and doesn't mean you're bad or you're in, you're at a certain level. It means on that day, five judges deemed that image to be of a certain scoring range, and you got that score. And I got to say that the bad scores in the years that I've been, competing, and when I could compete, have been more motivating than the successes. You know,
Mm-hmm. Oh my
but
gosh. Because when you're sitting in the room, and for those of you who have not entered or haven't been in the room when your work is being scored, I don't think you realize like just the pressure, not just that you feel as the maker, but also that the judges feel, right? Like there's a person on the other side
Oh
of
yeah.
that work. I remember, because judging being coming off the panel and like, removing myself from the conversation, right? I was just sitting there, like both of my feet are just tapping like crazy, like, come on, Kat, don't move, just listen, don't move, don't move. Right. And as they're judging, but it's that, I thought that I really expected X, Y, or Z, right? I worked really hard. I spent months on creating this concept and designing this piece and all of these things. Does motivate you,
Hmm.
right? Like you get that feedback and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that? Right.
Right.
And when you can take that into your client work and the work that you're creating for you that may never see the light of day, the feeling that comes from that, there's all this talk about manifestation and you have to feel the joy. You have to feel the joy on the other side of whatever it is that you want as the outcome. But like you said, it is the creative process. When you live
Right.
in that joy,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
ooh. Oh, I'm getting
Yeah.
goosebumps.
Well, that's the thing, is that like manifestation and manifesting abundance, and let's just be real. The harder you work, the luckier you are. The more you put yourself out there to opportunities, the more will come your way. So, some people will call it God, some people will call it karma, Buddha, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, if you find peace in what you do, you find joy in what you do, then no one can rob you of it.
Mhm.
That's as simple as that. They can maybe add to it, they can join in with you. But for me, competition is like, I can light a match and it's bright. And some people who just want to put you out, they just want to, blow it out and say, you know what, you're not good enough. Or you do that to yourself. You're not good enough, or you're not as, or you may deem it that a judge is blowing that candle out. The
Mhm.
judge might be sort of saying, you know what, you can shine brighter if you do this. Maybe you will stand out if you did this. And every judge will not always get it right. But with the way, I mean, obviously, even this conversation, there's got to be almost a prelude to it, because we're talking about things that some people may not understand. They might not understand the competition approach. They might understand what even icon means or anything like that. But that's why I'm trying to talk a bit in broader terms to appeal to a wider audience. But ultimately, no matter what you do, you've got to find the joy in it. And also, if you're a photographer, you need to be profitable. Because obviously, if
Mhm.
you're making money from something, you're proud that someone's respecting you enough to part with money to give it to you. And then it makes it more valuable to you because, you know what, I'm respected. Damn it. You know what? I am good at what I do. And I'll be honest with you too. I'm also more impressed with people who don't who don't produce quality photography and maintain a solid business. That's more impressive to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so there's many ways of looking at it. All I know is that, and people ask me all the time, Jerry, why would you and Melissa waste all this time? And for those listening and not watching, I did it in inverted commas. Why would you waste this time in running WPPI's competition, with no pay for most of the years and doing Icon for very little, financial return or no return? And I'm like, well, it's a responsibility at this stage in my career to lift people up. Another trophy in my cabinet is not going to make much of a difference to me, but me being a cheerleader and harvesting the nurturing a community to actually reach whatever their heights are and what their potential can be is really what it's all about. And so yeah, I'm very passionate about that, and that will happen until the day I die.
Well, and that next generation, right? And then the generation behind them.
Hmm.
This industry, it's a creative industry, right? And so it's gone from luxury to accessible to luxury to accessible and being able to be sustainable. When I really first started getting my feet under me on the business side, my work was not great. It was okay, but it wasn't, memorable. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
there wasn't really anything special about it of the photos, right? I found that the connection to the people who were trusting me and respecting me enough to pay me, like that's really where the value was. But it wasn't really until I started focusing on the creative elements to be more allowed that connection, like you were talking about with the matches earlier, right? Like a single match burns this bright. You put 5 matches together
Hmm.
and you've got a
Oh yeah,
fire.
of course.
Uh, and so when you can collaborate in that way, whether you're collaborating with yourself, your past self, your future self, and the people that are in the room creating with you, like you have always been really fantastic about like collaborative partnerships and in as a vehicle to help raise the industry. How did you come about with Graphy Studio?
Well, they were always on my radar, and I heard about this, incredible company from Italy producing all this work, and I just had this impression that they were really expensive and unattainable. I don't know. I just sort of their marketing was probably too good. So I had
Mm.
this intimidating impression, but many friends, and as you know, many friends of at the pinnacle of what they do. And, I was introduced to Graphy at WPPI. I would see them. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, they're so good and so collaborative. And Maureen is she's a genius.
Oh, she
There's no other
is
way of
great.
putting it. She's just so passionate. She's got the perfect blend of passion and pragmatism. Like you very rarely find that. She can disassociate herself with things to just get shit done. At the
Hmm.
same time, she can be as empathetic as the best of them, and that's what I love, what they foster in their world. And that's why I'm like, well, what can I do with you guys? How can I help? And whether it's just offering, like even just recently, I was doing a gig in on the East Coast, and I said, Maureen, I'm going to be there. Let's just get together with a bunch of photographers and let's do something. And we had literally life-changing epiphanies in what was meant to just be a business and branding marketing sort of gig. It got deeply personal, which if people
Ooh.
know me, I tend to get very passionate and personal very quickly. So yeah, so then it was like I wanted to create one of a kind albums that had never been done before. And then
Hmm.
they were never a no. Graphy would never say no. They would just say, all right, let's do it. How do we do it? And even now, I'm collaborating with them now to achieve something that has never been done. We do actually have a workshop in Italy coming up for a very affordable price. We realize that people are suffering and it's tough to get there and all that kind of stuff. So we've got something happening towards the end of the year, a 3 day sort of like a event that we're doing, and it's going to be amazing. So yeah, Graphy's much more than just an album and print
Hmm.
company and everything like that. They do such an incredible job with their community service, and I say that it's almost I can't even find the words to tell you what they do behind the scenes for the community with no
Oh
expectation of
gosh.
people of buying. It's not about that. I mean, it's yes, it affects them, indirectly or whatever, but ultimately though they go in there. How can we help with zero expectation?
With Maureen specifically, like you mentioned, like it blows me away at what she's able to accomplish, not just on like the production level of things, but in just her communication and her reach and how she's able to stay connected to the US market, right?
Yeah.
And the European market
Mhm.
and I remember I was giving a talk at WPPI last year for Graphy on sales. And I hadn't seen, they had just come out with a new line of frames. There was a frame with a 9-up at the front of the room. And I was talking about, like sales and having product in front of you. And I looked over, and this frame is like wrapped in velvet and it's sharp and I was like, oh my God, Maurice. I was like the level at which they produce new work, right? To
Yeah.
create those options. It's so much more than just a standard print lab that's just like
Yeah.
buy and go. So Maureen, if you're listening, we love you. You came into the award space and you were, really kind of nervous. Nobody's going to come to this thing. And now there's 1,000 people in the room. Like, where did you find your stride and appreciation for how it was contributing earlier in your career versus how you're trying to deliver that now to people coming up in this space?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, entering competition, and I mean, we're implying obviously the history of WPPI and the Icon Awards, which again
Mhm.
we carried the torch of WPPI. But my first introduction to WPPI's award system was, I had entered Australia before and all that kind of stuff, and was continuing to. But I heard about this organization that attracts more international people from all over the world than any other organization. So I was very curious. Then I'm like, all right. And back then, and still am, but obsessed with a collection of images, like an album. I'm very much about selling albums amongst wall art and other things, but an album for me is really, it's like a decathlon. You know what I mean? You could be great in running, you could be great in swimming, whatever it may be, whatever the events are. But for me, I think the best athletes do it all. And you prove it amongst over many, many images, many, many sides of an album and everything. So I'd entered an album and I got a phone call from a friend. This is the first time I entered without actually physically being at WPPI. And someone rang and said, a friend of mine said, you just scored a perfect 100. And it meant the world to me.
Oh my gosh.
I had no idea where I was in the scheme of things. And it doesn't make me perfect, doesn't make me the best. It's 5 judges on that day judged
Mhm.
my album that way. But it gave me, was it validation? I think when you're younger, you've sort of got feel like you got a bit more to prove. I'm not really ego driven, but was there a little bit of ego there? Maybe a little bit, but it was more like it wasn't ego really at the beginning. It was just let me just get it out there and let me just see. So really, it was me against me. I didn't care about where I was in the scheme of things. About hey, am I? Can I mentioned in the same breath as these heroes? So it was just a vehicle for my creativity. So what happened was when I first entered, I won the grand award. I won a couple placings, whatever. And then the following year, every time I shot a wedding and portraits, but wedding specifically, I was like, today's going to be the wedding album of the year. I would wake up and tell myself today's going to be the wedding album of the year. Today's going to be wedding album of the year. I would repeat it to myself. So call that manifestation, but without the execution, it's just a
Mhm.
dream. It's just nothing,
Right.
right? So it made me think differently. And then I became hungry to create something that had never been done before. And what hasn't been popularized, what hasn't been done before, what how can I make a statement? Wasn't for ego. I just want to push myself, and if I plant seeds, like if I'm growing and the seedlings fall off and hopefully other trees, grow as well. Fantastic. So at the beginning, it was very much me against me. And because of competition, I created, from what I know, the world's first complete 3D wedding album. I produced the world's first full leather album where the pages flop in your hands and with Graphy Studio.
Oh,
I paid homage to David Hockney with a Polaroid collage. I photographed a wedding and produced a Polaroid collage album. I mean, the list goes on. I did a shoot paying homage to the movie Sin City, and I created a fictitious story and produced an album like that. I mean, every year was what is going to be something that will break some new ground for myself and or
mhm.
the industry. And I did really well in competition, but I got to say, the joy of receiving a trophy, fine, that's great, but that lasts a little bit. When people come to me still and say, I've been following you for 17 years or 20 years, and you're still an inspiration to this day. And that's not, and again, that's not validation for me. I'm like, you know what? Someone stops me and says, you planted a seed 20 years ago, and I'm a tree now. Thank you. So for me, that's why a lot of people have said to me, like, Jerry, you're not on social media much. And I'm like, you know what? After COVID, where I almost died, and I've produced probably some of my best work in the last few years, I've said to my, like, let me just keep on planting seeds. I don't need to see the trees or the forest. Let me just do it. And for me, when I go on social media, I get distracted by the bullshit. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just focus on the process and not so much the result or the validation. Now, don't get me wrong. I know I need to do more social media, and I know that I can inspire a lot more people with what I do. And I've got a mountain of content that I haven't shared. But for me, it's very much about that process. And like I said, so for me, growing up in this industry like that, I wouldn't be who I am or what I am without that process, without that vehicle. Where would Djokovic be without Grand Slams and the Olympic gold that he just won? Where would he be? Where would the tennis world be without him, Nadal, Federer, now Alcaraz, and many others? So what I'm saying is that without competition, you could be a monk or a hermit and be the best tennis player in the world. And if no one knows you or sees you, then you're not going to inspire more people to
Be
to to
more.
but to be more. So, and that's the whole idea, is that, so for me, people ask, why do you care so much? Well, someone has to. So if Melissa and I didn't step into WPPI in that sort of that community driven role with no expectation for personal gain or benefit, arguably it would have died a long time ago. If we didn't step in with Icon, what would have happened? The Portrait Masters, obviously we're carrying on their torch as well. So there's many things, and like I said, I'm not here to be a martyr or self-profess anything. I'm just passionate about what we can do as an industry for the next generation, because people have got to stand up, put their hand up and saying, I'm available. This is what I can do. I don't care about the sacrifice in terms of what happens on a day-to-day basis. I'm there to do it. And just it's almost like, as well, there are so many people that sacrifice so much more on a global scale, let alone for their industry. It's almost like, you don't, no need to be humbled. You're not that great.
There's always talk about the ripple effect, right? And lifting up the generation behind us. And photographers, we have this, well, and a lot of mediums do, but photo especially, there is a lot of science in the art, and art is what propels us, like, oh, I created something from nothing. The same way, like for musicians, it's very similar. And the impact of that art for people, whether it's in portrait or documentary or wedding or insert genre here, the importance of that for humanity is like, I can't even fathom defining it. And when we're in the space of being creatives that do want to be more and have that ripple effect and connection with the world around us, it's how we connect to others around us. That's really where that bridge occurs from keeping something, as a hobby. You can be excellent, right? A monk up on a mountain somewhere, and be an excellent artist, an excellent photographer, an excellent insert thing here. But if it hasn't changed you, how could it possibly change someone else?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're in this space, and this is what I think is so magical about how you and Melissa both sort of champion this arena, is because that ripple effect, the byproducts of that are not just, hi, Jerry, we met 7 years ago, and now I'm a tree, right? But what has that allowed me to do to impact other people's lives? And what do they take from that? And how does that impact allow them to change other people's lives after that? And with the industry that does its sort of volatile, like everything for $1, $80
Yeah.
million and then 2000 and like the business side of things, right? And whatever's on trend for photo at the time. By staying in that joy and that creative process, business aside, that allows us to change the world and to stay connected to humanity. And I think that's really the most valuable component of how it is that we do change the world and change the industry. It's not, yes, do I want to support photographers and help them make real money instead of scrimping and saving and robbing Peter to pay Paul? Of course. But every single one of us is a creative at heart. And that means that we have to explore what we're capable of. And I think the fastest return for that is by exploring awards and going into a space where it's not just about the revenue that's generated, but also about what did you create? What did you
Yeah.
fail creating?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It's interesting. I think many photographers suffer from trying to please other photographers.
Mm.
It's a bit of an oxymoron because when we're talking about competition, we are saying we want to please other photographers. Let's put that aside for the moment. Day-to-day work, think of it like you do what you have to do what you want to do. That means get yourself a good sustainable business. Get yourself clients. Get a rhythm, systems, develop habits that form a solid foundation for longevity and whatever your version of success is. Buy yourself some creative freedom. And you don't even have to be good at photography. You can if you know how to put even the camera on. I mean, these cameras today, dude. I mean, you can put the camera on friggin' program at f22 and wave the camera and get a decent shot. I mean, let's face it. If you don't know how to take a decent photo, you suck. I mean, and I say decent, it's in focus and you can see someone in the photo. Like that's what I'm referring to decent. Now, the minute you make it meaningful, it's valuable. It doesn't even have to be well crafted.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I often say, well, what do you mean, Jerry? You saying you don't promote the craft? I promote the craft arguably more than anyone. And I'm saying though, don't rob yourself of the joy because you suck right now. We all suck when we start. So what I'm getting at is, I ask often a lot of photographers who are parents, when was the first time your child gave you a draw what was the first drawing your child gave you? Oh, I remember it was like when I was 3 and they went to kindergarten or 4 and they went to kindergarten. They drew the house and whatever. I said, was the drawing good? Says, well, what do you mean? It was beautiful. I said, well, was it good, technically good? No. I said, it was probably a stick figures. It was a crappy house. It was a crappy sunset. The dog is disproportionate. The perspective is wrong. We were coloring outside the lines. Let's face it, it was a shitty drawing. But because it was meaningful, it was valuable. I said, well, there you are. If you give up your time photographing someone else, you are giving up the most valuable commodity on earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's time, which is worth something. Okay, if you add time and meaningfulness, well, that's incredible. Now you add talent and reputation. Okay, now we're talking. So whenever I even talk to my clients, I'll often say, like, what's the investment? And I often say, with no shame, my time, talent, and attention is a minimum investment of X amount. People respect it. I'm going to give you my attention. What does that mean? I see you, I hear you. I'm going to have my blinders on for just you at the moment. So my time, talent, attention, my 3 valuable things on earth. I mean, health certainly is probably second to time,
Sure,
but
sure.
so if you add those things together, now, yes, I'm saying to you, I think people are obsessed with pleasing other photographers, which robs them of the joy. And also, when it comes to competition, you are thinking solely about what another photographer is going to think about you. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're obsessed with just the creative process to achieve something that's meaningful and valuable and well crafted, yes, the score that you didn't want or didn't believe you deserve will sting a little bit, no doubt. No matter how much you've prepared for that feeling, no different than an Olympian who really should have gotten a gold but made one mistake or a fraction of a second did something wrong and 4 years went down the drain. No, you were an Olympian. You competed at the highest level, and no one can take that away from you. So, and there's plenty of people that would try out for the Olympics and not make it, or there's plenty of people that go there as spectators. But you can't say that joy that you get by being around that community and that. I mean, look at Snoop Dogg. If you
I
told me
was just
20,
thinking the same thing.
told me
Like, how
20
did
years ago that he would be the mascot for Joy and I mean, he was always a cool dude, but
yeah.
he's the mascot for what it is to live life and be everyone's cheerleader. And Flavor Flav, I mean, holy shit, I wouldn't have believed you. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Even if you're not competing, to be a cheerleader means the world to people. And that's the one thing that's happened with me is that parts of me regrets that I can't enter my own competition, but I get more joy because we get to live people's journey. And even Melissa more than myself, because she will nurture everyone individually. I certainly are involved in many ways, but she gets to see the struggle of every single individual and understand their concerns, and then we share it together. And all of a sudden, when that person becomes a finalist or wins a silver or gets a third place or first or even a grand and they didn't expect to, I mean, that's worth so much more to me than just one more trophy in the cabinet. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I have no pressure on me. I have different pressures, obviously, just creating the competition and doing what we do and whatever it is. But for me, it's like I can just sit back and watch all the competitors, and I'm there to give people the high fives. I'm there to give people hugs when they're crying literally on my shoulder, and that's okay. It is what it is. But it's very interesting. It's a very interesting process.
Yeah, no, there was I was judging. This was I think at the tail end of COVID 21 maybe, and we had this print come up.
Who's
The image itself was on it was of a cancer survivor and she was holding her hair in her hands. We're all just like, okay, I got to put my glasses back on and wipe my
yeah,
eyes. Like the
yeah,
impact
yeah.
was just bananas that she was in the room and screamed right when the final score was announced because we went back and forth for probably close to 25 minutes. We had one person and just kind of the way like the formulas would work was if somebody has to be calling for the 100, but then at that point everybody else either has to come up or it's not going to be 100. And she ended up like hyperventilating and shrieking and like, oh my God. And I remember like you kind of walked back to her and were just like, it's okay, but you got this. This is amazing. Congratulations. And like kind of moving through the world. But at the awards dinner, she came running up. I was standing there with one of the other judges and she was like, you have no idea how much you've changed my life. And I didn't even know that my life could change.
That's the thing is that we're privy to so many of those stories. Not many people know all of them, and certainly, but I can't even I mean, and I won't mention their name, but we had a photographer who's long established, done very well. They were feeling a little bit flat, and they said last year's competition in the format that we did it and what we'd changed and how we how we did things, whatever. And she wrote us an incredible email about how much they were revived and excited about the process again. You've literally lit the fire under me. And this is a person that doesn't really need to prove anything to anyone, but to herself is important. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't see what they're going to do and how they're going to impact the industry and further their endeavors. So, and then there's also just someone who's been entering for several years, never scored an 80 and above, and reached that 80 mountaintop for them. And they're just it's their Mount Everest. My
Mm-hmm.
Mount Everest might be different to someone else's. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't diminish their journey. For me, we all often talk about raising the bar. Sometimes we raise the bar in our heads so much that it's so unattainable. I often would pride myself to say I'm an all or nothing guy. Like I wear it as a badge of honor. And at 51 years of age right now, I realize it's actually a curse. It's a blessing and a curse. Most of your biggest genius is your biggest curse. You give me a project, I'll be obsessed with it. That's my blessing and genius. My curse is I'll be obsessed with it
You'll
and
be
maybe
obsessed.
ignore other stuff. So what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying is that, you know, one needs to look at it and sort of say, all right, what are the habits that I need to form on a consistent basis and contribute to my version of success? So what I'm saying is if you put the bar so high and say, I'll only be happy if I win a grand award, then It's like me saying at 51, I'm going to be an NBA player. Well, dude, it's not happening. It's not going to happen. So sometimes you have to lower the bar a little bit and give yourself incremental victories that are not easy, but attainable. But because what you think, and if you do that incrementally, you are going to do it. In other words, like you're not going to just, do a high jump and oh, I'm just going to jump over 2 meters. Well, yeah, that's silly. Well, not silly. That's actually a pretty good jump. But let's say an easy jump that any of us could do. So give yourself like, okay, wherever you're at, go a bit above that. Give yourself the first goal. What is that? A silver. All right, you've done that. Let's go silver distinction. You've done that. Maybe out of one silver, maybe it's 2 or 3 silvers. You've done that. Let's get 4 images that at least 4 of your images that you've entered to contribute to your honors of excellence accreditation points. All right, great. And that's why it's funny, because a lot of people have questioned us over the years. Why does only 4 images contribute to your honors of excellence accreditation points? Why is it only 4? Well, if you were doing Taekwondo and you could get a black belt within a year, is that satisfying? Like, does that mean you're like, even if you're capable, you need the burn, you need the pain, you need the muscles to be torn and repair themselves to get to that next level. So when people become a master after 7 years or 10 years, it means something. When you become a grandmaster after 20 years, it means something. It's special. I've bled for this, and Cheryl Walsh, I mentioned this the other day, but I love it when last year she, as one of our grandmasters, she announced one of the grand awards. She's mastered the grand, so hence we'll give her the privilege of announcing a winner. And she mentioned, I sort of said to all the grandmasters, just give us a little story of what this means to you. And she said, at the start of my competition journey, I was a mum with a camera and a minivan, and now I'm a well-paid artist with a Lexus. And every year she would chip away, and she would get brighter and brighter, as all of us do. But I singling out an individual humanizes the thought that we're talking about now, and she couldn't be more proud of herself. She's just incredible. So I keep on looking at those artists and everyone around me, from the person who's just starting, who had the courage to do it and didn't even score well, but had the courage to do it. For me, as an artist, independent of owning the entity, is just as inspiring as someone reaching that mountaintop of becoming a grandmaster. We all start somewhere. We all suck when we start. It stings when we get a score that we didn't like or didn't think we deserved. But damn it, when you go-kart racing, it's so much more fun to be behind. It's so much fun chasing that person in front. When you're in front and you're looking over your shoulder, waiting for someone to crash into you, that's no fun. So relish the chase, relish the chase, and know that Melissa and I have fostered a very safe and nurturing place to enter. When you enter first, it's you against you. We're not comparing you to anyone. Yes, at one point, we're going to get the top 10 scoring finalists of each category. And even then, what we did last year, and not many people know this in actuality, is that like when you enter Icon Awards, you have the opportunity to actually get a video, like you get a critique. It's a video critique. It's the first of its kind. So the expert in that genre will be looking at an image on their device, and you can annotate with your finger and crop in close and do all these different things. And there is a library literally on the Icon Awards website for free of over 400 images of critiques. And it's an incredible platform. And so you can do that. Then if you want to, so when during the trade show at WPPI, we also critique all day, every day. I know that you were part of that. So all day, every day, and they were filmed. There's also another 100 odd images on the website of experts like yourself who've actually offered their time to critique images. So then we thought to ourselves, is there any point rescoring or critiquing the finalists? It seems redundant at that point. They've already received a score. You've already got accreditation points. Once they're there as finalists, and with the help of Tony Hewitt and many others in our leadership group, we said, why not flip the script and just talk about why these images are here? Why are they finalists? Let's celebrate what's good about them.
Oh, because I love that.
Right? So before it would be, if you get a score within a challengeable rate, and again, this might be difficult to understand if you don't know what I'm talking about, but there's got to be a certain mathematical equation for an image to be challengeable. And if it doesn't, we had introduced that every single image has to get one comment. What we do now, though, is the finalists, every single image is talked about for 2 minutes. So think of it like every single judge is advocating for this image. So it's like you and I know, the behind the scenes when you're in a room trying to determine the winner and you don't get a clear majority with votes, you've got to talk about and be an advocate for the image that you want to win. We thought, well, let's just make that transparent. Let's all 5 judges discuss why this image came to be the finals. And then we lay them all up on a wall, and you see this live. This is being recorded, so you can see this judging process live, and it was recorded, and rewatch it on Icon Awards website. You watch it as people have absorbed all the beautiful things about these images, and now I get to, with absolute positivity and no pressure of it being critiqued, because that's already done. Now you can just celebrate them. Think of it like, you're there at the Oscars. You're celebrating about what's good about these finalists. And then ultimately, the majority, and there's a particular, systematic mathematical equation that cannot be adulterated that determines the winner. So we love the process, and people ask us, why do we do it that way? Why isn't it all in print? Well, how would we succeed where WPPI, this big organization under Emerald Expositions, how would we succeed in having 8 rooms over 2 days and 60 odd judges? It's impossible. So we've said, well, we don't want to surprise our audience and say, look, this is just canceled or we're done. We want to know that when this grows to 10,000 entries per year, that we know that the finalists will only ever be a certain quantity that we can judge in one room over 2 days and bring it live to the wider audience and record it, which has never been done before. So we're very proud. And if you score an 80 and above in the digital competition, you will be published in a book, certainly available for sale. We don't make money on it. We charge pretty much close to cost. So it includes shipping as well. Graphy Studio produced it, and Dario Righetto from Love Edits designed. So there it is. If you score an 80
for
plus,
those of you
will
watching
be
the
in a book.
video.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And
yep. I can't tell you how many drafts we saw and how many times we looked at it, and for spelling and grammar and making sure it was correct. Now, the good thing is what you don't know. So in this year's book, it will have the placing winners. So we're going to have the first, second, third, and grand award winners from the previous year, and it'll have the digital winners of this year. So if you look on the spine there, it would say, 2023. On the spine, it will have 23, 24. So it's going to have the winners, like I said. And then one year only had to be a certain thing, but there'll always be an overlap of the previous year's finalists. So yeah, we're very excited about that.
Jerry, I love the evolution and like the attention to not just details, but like, because you're great at structure, right? But it's also about the details that are impacting people on an emotional level, not just for the validation, right? But it is an achievement. And you treat those details, like even the smallest of details, like 23 to 24. And then these winners are here. And then we're going to put, and just making it more.
I appreciate
because I think
that.
people get lost. People get lost. They're like, oh, okay. Like you said, you get a trophy, a pat on the back. Okay, now what do I do with that? How do I appreciate that moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing, is that when you're in that book, you're there forever. And I've got, I've been published in many books and magazines, and they're very sacred to me. It's an achievement. And not only that, like, there's many things that we change, a lot of subtleties. We also, normally you would get a medallion when you become an associate, and then you get little tokens with every single one. And we thought to ourselves, well, there's going to be people out there that will enter, in their mind, not ours, may never believe that they can achieve or win a trophy, as in become third, second, or first place. And let's just face it, not everyone's going to win a gold, silver, bronze, so to speak, in the Olympic terms.
Sure.
So we said, all right, an associate's a good achievement. There's a quick win. You get 5 points, you become an associate. Now, 15 more points, you become a master, so 20 points. That's worth something. So we, for the first time, we're not doing medallions anymore or tokens. You win a trophy. So if you become a master, you will have a trophy. It physically grows in size. So master, double, triple, grand. And people love that. Did it cost us more money? Yes. Did we have to do it? No. But did it mean the world to the people?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And not only that, like in the last couple of months, like every single day, we've shared on social media third, second, and first place of every single category leading up to the opening of the awards. My goal is eventually, and this I can't really promise this, but my goal eventually is to find a sponsor that is happy to put some money behind every single placing, so that when you win a third, second, or first place, imagine us putting like $50 or $100 to it on Instagram and it being live for like 2 weeks, and you know that this is going to be seen by a bigger, wider audience. It might also make a direct difference to your business because someone has
Mm-hmm.
seen on a feed an incredible image that wouldn't have seen it. So yeah, that we're trying to be very thoughtful, but we tell people, I love you, great ideas, but it takes someone to action it. So we're going to pull all this information together, and then trust me, when we can do it, we will do it. And that is if it affects the wider audience. It will not be and it'll never be a selfish pursuit. In other words, if someone gives us an idea that only benefits them as an individual, I'm like, well, it has to benefit the wider audience and the community. So our job is to look at the community, and that's how we design the competition. You know what would be really good? This, 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 this. You know what would be great and beneficial? This, 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 this. How do we make it last forever? Boom, boom, boom. And then all of a sudden it evolved. Like even this year, we had enough entries into the teenager and children category where we said we should break this up into two categories. So where children and teenagers, so any person from 1 to 19 years of
Mm-hmm.
age would be in one category. There were so many entries because we own the entity. We can say, well, let's just make them two categories. We don't have to ask anyone. It's a bit more work for us, but it's okay. So now there's two more categories. Enough people entered the creative, so more freedom in post-production, the creative portrait category, that now we're breaking it up into individual, and creative group. So as we get support from the community, we don't even have to be asked to do the right thing or to do the thing that benefits the wider audience. So ultimately, we want to be here in another 10, 15 years. And if one day we want to move on, I think any organization that's community driven is there to support and usher in who's going to outlive us, who is going to be our successor. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the whole idea, is that's what we want to do. We want to
We'll
make
take
sure
that
that
match to a torch, right?
exactly right. So that's the idea.
So, Jerry, I know that entries are open now for Icon Awards. When does that close?
Yeah, so at the moment, and I'm not too sure when this podcast is live or anything like that, but the competition was live as of August the 1st, 2024. It closes 1st of October. So there's 2 months to enter. So let me just give you a bit of an overview for those who are quite new to this and maybe not knowing fully what we're talking about. So the Icon Awards is basically, carrying on the torch of WPPI as WPPI's premier international photography competition.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Portrait Masters recently, as their accreditation and competition has closed as well. Well, they've got one more for people who want to sort of tidy up their accreditation. If you want to sort of achieve, you have a particular goal and you're very close to an accreditation, which I think is a great thing for that audience. We are also matching people's points, but the equivalent to the way we do it in our system. So basically, any scores of 80 plus on top 4 scoring entries of a particular year will go towards your accreditation. So we have matched WPPI's accreditation. We've matched to the equivalent of our program in Icon. And people have to understand this. You cannot just enter the physical print competition because that's what you did years ago.
Mm-mm.
You must enter the digital online competition to have the opportunity to actually be part of that finalist program. So here's what happens. So you enter, you've got 1 month to the end of August to take advantage of the early bird special. Now, let me explain why we did this, because we always said we're going to be transparent. Last year, in our inaugural Icon Awards year, we said, we're going to just simplify things. There's no early bird. Here's the price. Take it or leave it, whatever. What happened was no one entered until last week. So we didn't even know we were going to have a competition literally into the last week.
Mm-hmm.
And we were stressing all this work and everything. I'm like, all right, there's a reason why people do this. So the early bird special is not some opportunistic money grab just to basically get people to, to pay for the awards and to enter. It's not. It's basically so we know we have a competition and we can space out the vetting process so we can do that incrementally. So you save $10 per entry if you enter by the end of this month. That's the end of August. Then the price goes up by $10. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to make more money. I'd rather have enough images to vet and know we've got a competition that's supported and it works well. Now, from these digital entries, several things happen. You will get judged by 5 judges who anonymously judge your images. They are there to put this in a particular definition. Do not, if you're from another organization, do not think that an 80 here is equivalent to 80 here. The definition is going to be different, and we train the judges to think in those terms. They're not awarding a silver. They're saying, I believe this image is above average skill and technique in most areas. Therefore, it ends up being an 80 plus or to 84. So from here, you get scored. You get scored, and then if you score an 80 plus, you get a digital downloadable certificate. You get an emblem that you can put, a PNG that you can put on your images that you can promote on your website, you can promote on social media. You have the opportunity to actually pay extra for a critique. If you pay less, so it's $15 for a critique, you will go into a public critique. Everyone can learn from your images and your name will not be associated with it. So whether you end up getting a 90 or a 72, no one will know the images is yours unless you promote it. Okay, so you don't have to be embarrassed by it, whatever, it's anonymous. And if you want it private, you pay $5 more. Again, I don't want your money. I'd rather you make it public and take one for the team and have your legacy on that page forever. So if you pay $5 more, you can have it private. It may be you're photographing a politician, you're photographing, who knows, someone that needs to keep things private. No problem. You can pay $5 more. That critique is for your eyes only. Then from there, the top 10 scoring images and equal scoring 10th, that's assuming like there's not too many of those in all the categories that we can judge them on one weekend, you get invited to enter the print part of it. Okay, so let's call it the Print of the Year Awards or the finalist judging. That's not mandatory, by the way. You may enter that if you want to. And I've got to be honest with you too, Kat, is that we didn't know that people were going to physically enter the prints. And all but 2 people entered the prints because they were eligible. Now, what's the benefit of entering a physical print? The benefit is now your images will be celebrated by 5 judges during that weekend of the 2 days before the actual the trade show. And when I say celebrated, we're going to talk about what's good about it. It'll be recorded in front of a live audience, and it'll be broadcast to the world forever and a day. So that in itself, you're part of history right there. It'll be shared in a gallery at the trade show floor, which is amazing. Then you get a chance to win first, second, third, and grand. And we collectively gave away over $50,000 worth of prizes this year. So winners of the Grand Award won $1,000 credit at ProCam Camera Store. We had Westcott give something away, Platypod, a mega reflector. I gave away a Ghionis scholarship worth $18,000 to Emily Pearl, and she attended my workshop.
One of my favorite people. Yes.
So we're doing that again this year. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And here's the other cool thing, Kat, is that I don't know about you, but when I enter competition, I freak out about the categories. What do I do? The rules? Oh my God, whatever. And then you're staring at everything. You made sure to make not one thing wrong or right. Just know that Melissa is the most nurturing person on earth. I've never met anyone like
1000%. Yeah.
that joyful, but that fastidious. Like she's sort of like a nerd behind the computer, but she's the most empathetic and joyful person. It's very rare to find that combination. So I'm a lucky guy. You're lucky, as in the community is lucky because there's no intimidation factor. She will nurture you. You can go on the iconawards.com website in the bottom right in the chat box, and her average reply time is like 5 minutes or something crazy. So if you're unsure about a category or whatever, a question, just ask. And then of course we've got, just so you know, we obviously our Facebook page is very active, and we are doing weekly live broadcasts. Next week, we're talking about the rules. We're just sort of diagnosing the rules of the competition. what I'm very proud of, I work on like I'm the ideas guy, Melissa's the execution person,
Mhm.
right? So I come up with the ideas, I take into account, obviously we talk about it obviously together, but I'm the creative. Anything visual that you see, I'm very much actively involved in that. One thing I'm very proud of is that I said, you know what? How cool would it be that when you enter a category, you don't even have to worry about it. You just answer a bunch of questions. So you go in there, there's a wizard, and it first acknowledges you have to acknowledge that you did not create this image exclusively with AI. You
Mhm.
did not use stock art. So you're telling us, practically legally disclaiming that this is your creation.
I
That's the
made
first.
this. I
Yes.
photographed this. Yes.
Yes. What a concept, right? So you click on that. It tells us that you agree that you didn't do that.
Mhm.
Then you answer four questions. Four questions will get you to a category. And I promise you, Kat, I've tried to break this. I've never broken it. In other words, I'll answer these questions in so many different ways. It always ends up on the category that you're supposed to. So if it'll say, is this at a wedding? Is this a portrait? Did you use post-production more than corrective or beautifying or finessing the image, blah, blah, blah. And it gives you a category. We do require raw files and or unprocessed JPEGs along with your
Mhm.
entries. And this protects the integrity. You know that the cream will rise to the top. So just know the process it shouldn't be intimidating. And for those who are watching, it's like, I'll never be able to compete. If you only played a game with the expectation that you'll only play it if you win, how boring would life be?
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
I'm very competitive against myself. People think, oh, Jerry, I've got very good hand-eye coordination. So anything with a ball, I'm really good at within 10 minutes, even if I've never played it before. And so a lot of my family and friends hate me because I win normally mostly everything, whether it's ping pong or tennis or basketball or whatever. But all that I love playing someone better than me because it's more fun. It's more fun. And this is the thing. And I've often used the Olympics as the analogy, but when you're an Olympian, you pretty much have to be elite over a long period of time. As in, it takes years of hard work and dedication. The difference with Icon or any photography competition for that matter, you could just be at the right place at the right time and caught an incredible moment, had great subject matter, fluked good lighting for all I care, and you can still potentially win first, second, or third, or a grand. Like, and that's the beautiful thing about this is that yes, there is skill and craft, but we've all seen images. I mean, the recent images that came out of the let's not get political, but the image that I'm talking about that, you know, at a rally that happened
Mhm.
recently. I mean, these iconic, again, ignore your political affiliation. These iconic images that are just burnt in your brain forever. You could be that person, right place, right
That could
time,
be
or
you.
opportunity meets persistence and perseverance and hard work. It could be you. So you don't have to be, I'll never be as good as this person. I've seen people literally never holding a camera in their hands and within 2 years placing.
Mhm.
Like, it's insane to me. So don't think you're not good enough to compete. That's like saying, I'll clean the house before the cleaner comes. Like,
Well, let me
which,
tell you a little story, Jerry. You know how
yeah,
you said,
yeah.
there were only two people that didn't enter print for the exhibition last year. I was one of two.
So I would have kicked your ass right on this call if I actually knew. Yeah. So you were a finalist, but you didn't enter the print.
I didn't enter the print.
Why
Um,
not?
I think I missed Melissa's email or I grabbed it and I flagged it and I didn't go back, something. Because I remember and then I got your deadline to submit the print component was
Yeah.
tomorrow. And I think I was on the road and I was like, what? How did I? No.
Well, you got to be in it to win it. Like,
Yes. Yes.
that's a lesson in itself. And here's the other thing, Kat, is that so many people, I myself, probably you too, when you see the awards get announced, you're like, shit, my image from last week at the groom's coverage could have beaten that. Well, I don't care. You didn't like, don't be a dick about it. You didn't enter. So that person deserves to win because they played the game. So
Well, and they followed through. I didn't follow through. Like, just all of the moving parts and all of the things, which was also why, like, that was the impetus of that. This is my icon book for the year that could have
well, yeah,
gone
I mean,
differently,
you're
right?
you're in
But
there, you're in there, obviously, but you could have been
mhm,
there as a placing or possibly even a grand.
yeah,
So, yeah, look, here's a bit of strategy. Every year in competition, I was very strategic. Even in sports, I'll often beat better players just by strategy. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay. Have a look at the gallery of winners. So go to iconawards.com, click on winners, and you'll see all the winners. Go to the categories and have a look at the least represented categories. In other words, you might see a category with 10
mhm,
images in there. Enter that one as well as the ones that you enter. So what I would do, people, how did you win so many awards, Jerry? I'm like, I like to think I'm decent at what I do, but I'll be honest with you. I would look at the categories and say, well, shit, I'm going to enter 15 categories. I'm bound to win something. You know what I mean? It's a law of averages here. So,
mhm.
so be strategic. And if you try to break the rules, we will catch you. And now you might
Oh
you might
yes,
ask, what does that mean? No two images shall be of the same subject entered into the same category and or look like anything else you've entered. In other words, you could have this incredible subject and you're going to enter 3 images of that person in a category. First of all, you can't do that. That's against the rules. Let alone, even if you could, you're watering down your images. Be smart
yeah,
about it. Let me say this. Let's say that you do some unique thing, background lighting, composite, whatever, and you've done it here. There's a beautiful representation here. Then you do that same concept with a different subject, your impact is gone. Now, yes,
yeah.
the images will be judged independently and you can get silvers and golds and whatever, whatever. But don't think of the bottom up, think of the top down. In other words, assume the best case scenario. If both of these do really well and both of these go into the awards in the same category and both of them are finalists, you've lessened your impact and they cancel each other out. No different than in the Oscars. Often when you get two, very rare, but like two male leads or two
Mhm.
female leads who have equal airtime in a movie and they're both nominated for an Oscar, they normally cancel each other out. I think I think John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction, for example, like it's sort of, like you're sort of looking for something a little bit different. So be strategic. Just look at it as a competition. Yes, you're there to get the juices flowing and inspire the industry, whatever. But if you're there strategically, if you want to do well and hopefully get in the mix of the finalists, think about it like if you want to win, then you're not just playing your own game. You're trying to work out how everyone else is going to do. And the simplest of images can win. And think of
Mhm.
something that's happening in the world, something that's timely, something that will evoke a strong emotion. Someone like, I mean, Kelly Brown is an absolute beast,
Oh my
absolute
gosh, she's a
beast.
genius.
She is a genius. And when it comes to competition, and she enters a lot of personal work, and there's times where she'll go out of her way to enter something that's very unique and very different. And she's always up in the mix because she's not only great at what she does with day-to-day work, she will be strategic and she's a master at what she does. So, there's many people within your genre that know their shit and they could mentor you in a certain way. And like I said, it's just fun to see. You recognize the effort and you recognize that people who are putting the time and effort in, and also don't be intimidated by that either. I would say I don't think I've ever actually photographed for a competition entry. I think 99% of all my entries over the years have been actual client work. So
Really?
don't, yeah, yep. Think of everything that I've ever done. Usually it was paid work. It was a
Mhm.
paid portrait, a paid wedding. Now, don't get me wrong. I'd shoot the wedding. I'll say to myself, today is going to be the wedding album of the year. But I shot it was just a normal job. Then I got the photographs and said, well, how would I design it in a way that would make an impact? Maybe that Sin City homage thing, that was a personal project, nothing to do with awards, but I ended up entering it. That was a personal project. And there's some personal projects that I entered, but I didn't say today I'm going to be strategic and photograph for a competition entry. Those who do, though, consistently will actually do quite well. Some will also make the effort and do it and not get a good score and then be robbed of the joy. I'm like, well, dude, you just created something exceptional. Maybe the execution or the technique didn't marry up to your inspiration, or there was something that brought the image or album, whatever it was, down. But don't rob yourself of that joy. I remember I produced, to this day, probably the most meaningful wedding album I've ever produced. It was of multiple generations. So what I did was I said to the couple, do you have your parents' wedding album? Do they have, was their wedding photographed? Grandparents, were they photographed? So what I ended up doing was I ended up showing the groom. I photographed a photograph of the groom's father for historical purposes, not to mislead it as my own. So then you saw the 80s groom's father next to the modern groom. Then you would see the bride with the 80s bride of the mother. And so I would always juxtapose those two things. And I paid homage to the way I, in the dark room, I'd do a proof sheet and circle the one that I loved, and I would enlarge that. The bride was an illustrator, as in she would draw really well. So I said, have you got a drawing of your dress? So I grabbed that drawing of her dress. I put it in the album. The grandmothers were the surviving grandmothers on both sides. I got a shot of the grandmothers and put it against the wedding. And then I had 3 generations. And then I said to Melissa, I go, what happens if they were pregnant? She says, well, they're just really young, of course. Well, they wouldn't be pregnant. I said, well, what happens if they were? And I rang him up. I said, hey, mate, like long time no see. Let's catch up for a drink. And he said, we'll catch up, not for a drink. My wife's pregnant. I said, you wouldn't happen to have an ultrasound, would you? I said, 2 days ago, we just got one. And it's a boy. I said, I'm coming over. I'm photographing the ultrasound. So the very last spread in that album, you see the 4th generation of this album. And I put a quote. It says, we don't own our family history. We simply preserve it for the next generation. I went to Graffy's studio and said, I want to create a one-of-a-kind piece. And we created, and I believe I helped inspire this movement. Back then, there was no boxes. There was no boxes that Graffy did. I was the first one to do it with them. So I said, can I have a 1-inch piece of acrylic, a box? And we printed solid white on the cover of the acrylic, but I typed in the words very large of the name and the wedding date. So you'd look through the lid and you'd see the photograph of the front cover of the album literally come right. You'd see the photograph through the text of this album. Then when you lifted up the album, I said to Maureen and the Graffy, I said, can we print this beautiful ultrasound at the bottom of the box to look like an X-ray and engrave the name of the baby on the bottom of the box?
Yeah, Jerry.
And let's put feet underneath this box. And well, shit, I have it right here. Give me 1 second.
Next time you think that you possibly couldn't ever create outside of concept and really make something special for your clients, I want you to revisit this conversation right here. Like,
okay, so those who are listening to this podcast, you're not privy to what I'm showing, but I'm just showing what I just described. Okay, so that is the first of its kind at Graffy. So it's so heavy. Let me just put that down.
I'm sure.
So this is the lid.
So cool.
Okay, so that's the couple.
Okay.
And then, so I also put in the full name of the groom and his birth date, which is not typical in a wedding album.
No.
Because you think about it, like it's like John and Mary, June 10, whatever. But I'm like, so there you see the groom, and then you see the groom's father. And what I did was put photo corners. And this is what Graffy Studio calls a DMA, a digital matted album. So if you see it with the light reflecting, you'll see sort of like soft little reflective, almost like spot varnish. And, we had, here's me photographing the guys. Here's the 80s groomsmen. And I even kept the original shitty color of their family photograph. So this is the groom when he was a baby. And this is the actual
Right. So you've got all of the magentas and all of the yellows
yeah.
and all of the things.
Yeah, and then I'll just show you a couple of hallmark pages. Let me show you here. So this one, for example, was an example of the bride, as a proof
Hmm.
sheet, the way we used to get it, like back in the day. And you'd circle your favorite and you'd print it. Um, and like the album goes on and on. That's like an example of an illustration, as you can
Oh, I
see.
love that. Just the
And
beautiful sketch of the dress with right next to her, and a
well,
beautiful portrait.
yeah, and then this is the actual the vows of the bride.
Oh my
And we
gosh.
put even sticky tape that looks like sticky tape, basically a spot UV. And then I love this from the groom. It basically shows final draft, and his writing is atrocious. And I wasn't going to include it, but it's now a term of endearment, you know. Um, and it just goes on and on. I'll show you my favorite spread. This is one of the cool ones. This is basically
Hmm.
the
With the
bride and groom's
parents,
corners.
right?
Yeah. And then you've got my favorite spread of the grandmothers. Isn't that
Y'all, if you
adorable?
weren't just heading over to YouTube to watch this right now, like,
And then let's show you the end of it. I asked the bride to draw a drawing on the way to finish, like, give me a drawing that you would like to include at the end of your album. And she gave me that. And I got the quote. And then just when you think, you're done with the album, you turn the page and then you see you know, the ultrasound.
wonderful.
And believe it or not, he was due the date, his birth date was the anticipated to be the exact date of the father's birthday. And this is the bottom of the box.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that cool?
That's fantastic, Jerry. And it's
Now,
that kind of innovation, right? And not just from like an award standpoint, right? But in how to create something really meaningful for your people. And
I think that if it wasn't for that, so I guess this is my point that I almost forgot why I introduced this, because I'm sure that you're about to wrap up the show, and I'm like, oh, I forgot to show you something, and here we are talking like old buddies as we are. But why I wanted to show you this is at that point I had 8 album of the years, like first place and many grands, and then I did this one. And then I don't know if the judges understood that it was the second generation, third generation,
Mhm.
or really appreciate the meaningfulness of it. One judge scored it a 90. The average score was like 83. I'm like, guys, this is probably the best album I've ever done in my life, at least the most meaningful. What are you not seeing? This has not been done before. 4 generations in one album.
In one album, yeah.
And I'd also like to think the execution was pretty cool too. Now, what I'm getting at is this. I entered it. It scored like an 83, 84, which if you've won the grand several times,
Right, right.
an 83, 84 is not that great. Like I've climbed Mount Everest. I'm not happy to
I've
just
climbed
climb
Mount
along a
Everest
small
and now
hill.
I'm at the first summit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is like, your sophistication level grows and you push yourself more and you want to medal. You know what I mean? You want to be on that podium, so to speak. What happened was that the person who could have actually challenged this to be higher didn't take the opportunity to do it. Hence, as you know, I kick asses of judges behind closed doors. I'm like, if you're passionate, fight for it. Like, don't,
Mhm.
because, someone like me, I've been on the receiving end of, well, I gave this a gold, but I'm not going to fight for it. And you could have discussed, a few different things. Long story short, this could have been in the mix. It wasn't. I got what I got, and it stung. I got to admit, it stung me. Then I woke up the next day and I said to myself, did that change the fact that I produced the most meaningful album that I've ever done in my, at that point, 25-year career, whatever it was? No. The couple have that album exactly. Like, what an incredible legacy for their family to have 4 generations in one album. And it made me think differently about the way I shoot portraits. Imagine including multiple generations in portraits.
Mhm.
Nothing to do with the wedding. Like, it's changed my thinking. And maybe it changed many others. on in their journey as well. And that's why I'm so passionate about this process. Just know, though, that if you don't get a score that you believe you deserved or wanted, it can't rob you of that joy if you're doing it for the right reasons. Now, don't get me wrong. There's people out there that just are trophy hunters. Fantastic. But if you want to have longevity, the minute you get a hurdle and you don't jump it, you're going to feel like you failed. I didn't fail. Like, there's going to be times where you say, you know what? Maybe they just weren't ready for me at the time, those judges.
Well, it's
Or
innovation.
yeah.
It's
Well, people don't
innovation,
understand it. Yeah.
And being, at the end of the day, it's about having that impact one client at a time.
Exactly.
And so
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
wow. You know what? I think that's where I'm going to leave it, Jerry.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, look, thank you for the opportunity. We love I love these kind of stimulating conversations and discussions. And like I said, we would love to see you at the Icon Awards. If nothing else, try to make your way to WPPI so you can, if you're not going to be an Olympian, if you don't want to nominate yourself as Olympian, at least attend the Olympics. And I think you'll be very excited and very inspired by what you see.
Oh, absolutely. It's always so
Yeah.
inspiring. I'm just going to be Snoop Dogg though this year.
I love that. Oh my God, he's so funny. So yeah, for those who are interested, we mentioned it many times, but Icon Awards, spelt correctly, iconawards.com. A lot of people ask me about where they can learn more about what I do and how I teach and other different things. Very simple, jerryjerry.com with a J. So jerryjerry.com. And what people ask, well, why do you do that website? Well, I've got multiple things that I do, but when I see someone on the street and they're in a hurry, I'm like, oh, can you photograph me, or can I learn photography from you? I'm like, jerryjerry.com. You won't forget it.
I love it. I love it. Jerry, thank you so much for being here. And
No worries.
I will see you in Vegas, my friend.
I can't wait. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.